You know, I was really hoping that by the next time I filmed one of these, I would have decor behind me. But clearly that's not happening. Here's to doing things in 2024 that we said we were going to do all 2023, right? I wanted to give you guys just a little rundown of what I've been watching this year. Two things I want to get right off the bat with are the Echo series, which I really enjoyed. I think I'm gonna do a more full review. So maybe by the time you're seeing this, you'll have seen an Echo review from me. I think that the series has a really strong core idea of this woman coming from kind of two different sides of her life, from her actual biological family as well as being shunned by that biological family, and coming from this kind of more criminal world background who very much operated like a family for much of her life. And I think it's interesting how this series is trying to say it's not as connected to the rest of the MCU as anything else, compared to something like Moon Knight, which actually feels not connected to anything else in the MCU, versus this, which very much does have strong ties to both Hawkeye and Daredevil. And I get what they're trying to say is that, like, you can watch this without having seen anything else. But I just feel like this is sort of like where they've left Echo, and I'm kind of disappointed because Alaqua Cox is phenomenal. Basically, I think I mostly enjoyed the show, except for a few key things that happen towards the end, which make me feel like the show is being forced to take cheap shots at itself. And I feel like it has strong ideas that are strong themes, but they really force them to become physical entities of the show rather than just being a facet of the show. So that's my thoughts on Echo beyond my fuller review. Then I've been watching the Percy Jackson series, which as of today that I'm filming this, January 30th, it is the finale. I have seen all of the episodes. I was lucky enough, God, if you could tell 12-year-old Sash that she was going to get to watch the Percy Jackson TV show early. That was a pinch me moment. That was a pinch me moment, and I will have a full review of it if it's not already on the channel. By the time you're seeing this video, it will be coming soon. I think with Percy Jackson, I have a lot more to say in my in-depth review, but what I'll quickly say here is that I had a really great time with it. The Sally Jackson, Percy Jackson relationship that is so emphasized here is a really beautiful tie from the book. And I think what's kind of fun about this is since it's so far removed from the release of the very first Lightning Thief book, and this season being the Lightning Thief, basically, it's allowing people to rediscover it. It's allowing people to really for me, it's been tapping back into like my 10-year-old to 14-year-old self who like this was all I could think about. Basically, my life was Percy Jackson and then Avengers, and now it's just both. It's been really cool to see online communities come around this series that like in middle school. Did I do my blush really bad, or is the lighting just weird? Okay. To see communities come together around this thing that I loved so deeply in middle school that like wasn't necessarily as popular as like Vera Bradley bags at that point. You know what I mean? And I really love it. I love getting to be alive at this point in time to see this. I have a lot more in-depth thoughts on the series and kind of the way the community is dealing with this show, possibly in less positive aspects, but obviously watch the series, and I reread The Lightning Thief this month. I'm trying to space them all out a little bit instead of rereading them all at once, because I'll probably do this as the show continues to come out, which I'm hoping today and tomorrow we get a season 2 confirmation greenlit, but I'm really excited to dive into this world to see aspects of it come to life, and even if it's not exactly how I imagined it in my head, it's still so cool that it exists. Those were basically the two major shows I watched. Obviously, I've been watching some Family Guy in there. Obviously, I've been watching football. Gotta support Taylor. And just kidding. I'm just sad that the Cowboys aren't. In 2024 is gonna be our year. 2025 Super Bowl. Super Bowl 59. Okay, I'm saying it now. Movies I watched this year. I have been on a little bit of a movie kick recently, and I kind of love it because honestly it was prompted by the fact that last year, by the time 2023 ended, I had seen under 30 new 2023 releases, which kind of made me upset because a year previous I had done 41, and so I was just kind of like bummed with myself. But in typical me fashion, right before all the award shows started, I was like, I need to watch some of the biggest movies of last year. This bad boy, Saltburn, which this is the fun part about reviewing these after they've come out technically, and I can hold up the screeners. This one's really fun. I love the back of this one. Somehow exactly what I expected it to be, not what I expected it to be at all. This movie is truly a visual feast Like like the way that Emerald Fennell has her and her production designers and her cinematographers have come together to design the look of Saltburn, the feel of the film. Hold on, this might be easier. The way that people have come together to make this what it is so phenomenal. The performances in this, Barry Keoghan, of course, is phenomenal. But I think that Jacob Elordi really needs to be praised for his performance in this, which I think we're all forgetting. People keep talking about like Rosamund Pike, but like Jacob Elordi is able to embody this hot, rich guy that you probably should hate, much like Nate from Euphoria. And yet there's something really sympathetic about Felix's character here, especially as the movie continues to go on. Obviously, this movie has gone viral for multiple scenes in the film being a little out of pocket, outlandish. I'll be honest, the movie is more shocking in moments that are less grotesque, which is really cool, I guess. I don't know. I have a hard time talking about movies like this because this is like a fever dream of a movie that feels like a combination of a bunch of things that I would 100% like. Like, I read a book last year called If We Were Villains, or I finished it. I've been trying to read it for like 2 years. That book, what it wanted to be is this movie. That's what I really appreciate. Is like, this movie is really something that like you appreciate if you're an enjoyer of dark academia, if you like possibly even like Gossip Girl, but don't mind something getting a little artsy and A24-esque, which I don't believe this is. There's something just really fascinating about this movie. I'm being very vague. The Iron Claw, I have a full review of this, but I do want to bring this up because this was the New Year's Eve movie that my family and I watched. I got them all to watch it, which was kind of a depressing end to 2023, but also I am a little bit enraged, honestly, that nothing about this movie was nominated at the Academy Awards, as far as I'm aware, and I will correct it in editing. That is a damn shame. That is just false to me. Then I watched Priscilla. This movie has stuck with me because it is so quiet and slow, and I'm not typically a fan of that kind of a movie, but the performances by the woman that plays Priscilla, who is Kaylee Spaney, and Jacob Elordi as Priscilla Presley and Elvis Presley. This movie, look at me. If you are one of the people who related to all that, the One Direction stuff that I was posting last week on my Instagram, or if you were somebody who was like a big Justin Bieber fan and wanted to be the one less lonely girl he took up stage, or like literally if you were a young teen girl, loved some type of famous boy, this movie, you need to watch it. Sofia Coppola does this beautiful thing, having been a young girl at one point, who probably was also obsessed with some type of male celebrity. You are able to capture the history, the actual real life events that happen here. You are able to capture the teenage naivete and dream and like the longing and that feeling in your chest that like, if I don't marry Niall Horan, what is the purpose of my life, right? Like that's what you feel like when you're 13, 14, which is how old Priscilla is. I'm just reminding you in the beginning of this movie. But then you also have the beauty of a woman who has once been that obsessive teen girl, who has grown into womanhood, who realizes how insanely problematic it would have been, like me watching this, if I did run away and marry Niall Horan, who was much my senior, would have been a problem. And I think this movie is able to capture really sympathetically Priscilla Presley's idea of the world and what she saw in Elvis and what she wanted in this life, in this marriage. There's something really amazing about what Sofia Coppola was able to do here with that female understanding of like, both as a grown woman looking out for a younger woman, being like, this is scary, you need to stop, there's a lot of red flags that are telling you to stop, but also being that idealistic, romantic young girl who's obsessed with somebody. And that is the most phenomenal feat that this movie is able to accomplish. Once again, Academy, did you not see this? I'll send you my screener. I'll send it to you and you can watch it. Next up, I watched American Fiction, which I'm so happy to have actually seen nominated because I heard not as many people talking about this film as I would have imagined based on obviously the critical acclaim it has now achieved. Sterling K. Brown and Jeffrey Wright in this movie. Everyone is phenomenal. All the performances are phenomenal in this movie, but they specifically stole the show for me. You guys know I love Sterling K. Brown. Anytime he's in a movie, I'm going to be excited about it. But Jeffrey Wright, I think he so rarely gets to be a kind of comedic character as well as being a leading man. And I think this story really suits him so well because he is able to embody a very serious, passionate man who starts to kind of live life as if there's kind of no rules. This is a movie for type A people, okay? He has lived his life kind of playing by the rules, doing things the way he thinks he's kind of supposed to, but it's led to him having a career that is kind of at a standstill and lackluster relationships with his family. And there's kind of one event in this movie, which I won't spoil because I think it was handled well in trailers to not give it away, that kind of makes him reassess his life. He ends up going from writing books that I think from the vibe of the movie you can kind of tell are maybe like fantasy books that are not necessarily focused on Black characters, and therefore his books kind of get put on a Black literature shelf, but nobody's really reading them because they're not necessarily about Black characters. And he ends up writing what he thinks is a very inaccurate but stereotypical representation of a Black man's life, and he tells it as this like semi-autobiographical thing from this kind of anonymous perspective. It starts to go gangbusters. It becomes his best-selling book very quickly, and he's sort of struggling with this behind-the-scenes feeling of, I need this financial success for things that are going on in my life. However, I vehemently disagree with this portrayal of a Black man in society, or I disagree with this being considered literature at all. And it's all told in this kind of literary setting. So if you're a book fan, you'll really appreciate this literary setting discussing like what books sell and what books don't, and does that have anything to do with their literary merit, and should it? Or do books that sell well get awards because they sell well, despite the fact that they're not actually great pieces of literature? Or maybe they are great pieces of literature because everyone loves them. He just starts to do these more and more outlandish things to kind of try to prove a point about how stupid this book he's writing is, but it keeps becoming more and more wildly successful, and I think it has this really great dissection as a book fan. There's plenty of books that I see that I personally don't like that sell like hotcakes, and I'm sort of like, this is not nearly the literary level of other beautiful pieces of work that I've read. But is it really my place to judge? Also, I'm someone that's never written anything like that, so is that really my place to judge? But it also dissects the what counts as a Black story, where he is obviously a Black man with a Black family, and he's living a life that is a Black life simply because he's a Black man. Yet the way he lives his life compared to the fictional version of himself is not necessarily considered to be Black, and it's sort of this interesting dissection of like what counts as a Black story in media, and like why is there a shallow view of that. So this movie dissects so much. It has such a fun comedic satire tone to it. Great performances again all around. Just a really good time, and I like the way it ends really strongly. I think is just sticks with that comedic tone in a way that also gives you a lot to chew on and think about. So really, really loved this one. And then I watched The Holdovers finally, and the one thing I'll say about The Holdovers is I thought it was a really great movie. I unfortunately waited till like mid-January to watch it because I wasn't able to watch it anywhere else, and then it was available on Peacock and I watched it with family. When I first started hearing about this movie, I was kind of surprised that people loved it so much, and I was really kind of getting excited to go see it. Like I really wanted to go see it, and I feel like if I had seen it between Christmas and New Year's, that would have been like the ideal perfect time. Like I can't really to rewatch it next year during that period of time. But I think the thing that I found the most interesting about The Holdovers is I remember in 2019 when Knives Out came out, not a lot of people seemed to be talking about it beforehand. I'd seen very few trailers, and I just decided on a whim I wanted to go to the movies on my birthday, and my now husband and I went to go see it, and we were just blown away. We walked out and we were like, why is no one talking about this movie? This movie's amazing. I gotta recommend it to all my friends. This is amazing. And I feel like that is what people felt when they saw The Holdovers pre-Christmas. But post-Christmas, and especially post-Golden Globes, I feel like the movie has so much hype around it that it meets that expectation, but it simply can't exceed it because of the amount of high praise that it has received. Like, you cannot, it'd be like telling someone after, I don't know, La La Land had the whole fiasco with like Best Picture, like trying to tell someone afterwards that like there's this amazing movie that you just haven't seen yet. So I think it's like the expectations, it's not the movie's fault. I think the performances again are wonderful. I think the story is really sweet and charming, and for a movie where like the end result of the film, the status quo at the beginning of the movie and the status quo at the end of the movie are very only slightly different. Yet the journey of the film, you feel this very momentous change has taken place. And I really like when movies can do that, because I'm not usually a fan of nothing happens movies, but this gave me a more of appreciation for like a slow burn of events that something changes by the end, but not a ton. And a movie I'm gonna really briefly skip over because I didn't really like it. It's called The Family Plan. It's a Mark Wahlberg Apple TV Plus movie. I feel like Apple TV Plus and streaming services in general are being forced to make the kind of straight to DVD or like Disney Channel sequel type movies that I just don't think are very good. And the one thing I'll say about this movie is it really bothered me that it felt like there was very little like attention paid to continuity, because I have no problem watching a movie that is not an artistic Oscar baiting movie. Like I love a good fun comedy. But I feel like in so many places, this movie, it tried to do specific things in the script that would have been acceptable, but then it undercut it by sometimes not having that continuity all the way through. One example is there's a moment where a character throws phones out the window of a car, and no one has their phones for the rest of the movie. Yet in a very near scene to that, like afterwards, characters are all listening to music. And what I'm a bit confused about is my husband was like, oh, they're listening through the car. My confusion is it doesn't seem like it's presented that way. Another situation, a baby carrier and a baby is left on the downstairs level of a home. And in the next scene, he's coming back downstairs and he picks up the baby from upstairs and takes it back downstairs, where I'm like, no, you left the baby downstairs. So maybe that's me being overly critical. I just think, like, if you want a fun time and something that's appropriate for all ages of your family or to watch with your parents, great suggestion. Personally, was not my fave. The last 2 movies I've seen most recently in January have been Catch Me If You Can, which is a movie that I feel like everyone has seen on TV at some point. Like, if a TV's just on in the background, no sound, you've probably seen good big chunks of this movie, because I felt like I'd seen most scenes in this movie before, but obviously in the context of the entire story. Great. It's based on a true story, which is kind of crazy. There are, though, questions about how true the true story it's based on is. Leonardo DiCaprio is great in here. I think in this you get to see how promising of a young star he really was, because this movie was filmed in the early 2000s, I think. And I think Tom Hanks, again, after seeing some less than my favorite Tom Hanks performances, that's not the best way to put it, but after seeing Tom Hanks and Elvis, I've kind of had a sour taste in my mouth towards him, and I feel like he's just so much better in this kind of straight man role, which I feel bad saying because he's such a talented actor that you'd think he could do a lot of things, but I just feel like as a villain or when he's trying to do a lot of accent work, I can't like it as much as when he's just kind of being the straight man, like the follow the rules, this is how you go through life, this is how life works. I don't know. That really works in this movie, especially opposite Leonardo DiCaprio's kind of chaotic energy in this film. And then last but not least, certainly not least, I watched Mad Max Fury Road for the very first time, which I feel like is like, I don't know why I'm making this such a big deal, but I feel like for me, as someone who is, I feel like for a film buff, that is a quintessential watch, and one that is in recent memory as a quintessential watch. I think I'm really impressed learning the history of the film. I will say after finishing it, I was sort of like, I don't want to say on the fence, but I was sort of like, I liked it, but I don't know that I thought it was like the best movie ever. And again, I find myself watching these movies that have been critically acclaimed for years and being like, oh, this has been hyped up a lot. And again, it's that like it can only meet expectations. With this though, I think there's a lot to dissect, and I think you watch it a second and third time and just appreciate it even more, and that's when it becomes a favorite movie, or you're like, oh, that movie is so great. I had a friend say that like you can freeze any moment of that movie and have it be really artsy, and I feel very much that way with it being also an action film. I really love also the lore. Like it really reminded me of like Dune, but with like way less time and exposition, which I really appreciated, like how efficient the film is. And that's something I'm really appreciating with movies as they get longer and longer, when a movie can be really efficient, like Mad Max Fury Road. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Let me know what you watched in January, and I'll see you guys in the next one.